My name is Tony Elvin, and I was born in the UK in the 60s. And my parents are from Jamaica. And they moved from Jamaica to Great Britain to seek a better life. It certainly wasn't for the weather. And Great Britain at the time was fairly hostile to immigrants. There was overt racism, which was quite commonplace. There were, outside of sports and media, there was very rarely positive images of black people at the time. And there was an awful, race relations were really quite bad at the time. And so, you know, there were always images of black people being arrested in the streets, and there were then also African war and famine, and there was malnourished babies covered in flies, and Angolan warlords on the backs of jeeps. It was really quite a stressful time. But despite that rather depressing racial backdrop, I grew up with my self-worth intact. And I have still to this day a very strong can-do attitude. And at times, my self-esteem borders on megalomania. You know, I am quite a, you know. And this was all down to my parents. And in particular, my mother, Amy. She is a very proud lady, very, very proud lady. She has exceptionally high standards and a real strong sense of expectation, is hugely, hugely aspirational. And she kept her 4 sons on a really tight leash, you know. And we were loved. She made us feel that we were loved. And we were also told that we could be anything that we wanted to be, which is really important. I remember her telling me that not to get caught up in the black versus whites thing, because a black person could do as much harm as a white person. It wasn't about that. It was how you were treated and how you were respected. And that was hugely liberating for me, hugely liberating for me. And I also remember when I was small, my parents, they didn't buy tinned peaches from South Africa because of a boycott or an apricot or something like that. I couldn't quite remember what. It was, you know, it was just thing, you know. But we had a very secure childhood. And so jump a few years later, I leave school, and I'm doing a practical but rather uninspiring engineering apprenticeship. And it was around about the time that Nelson Mandela was free. And I remember thinking that somebody could be locked up for 27 years and on release be talking reconciliation and not death to his captors or revenge affected me really quite profoundly as it did with a lot of people around the world. And the fact that he was globally respected and black was really significant for me on a really deeply profound level. It was hugely inspiring for me. So, you know, we do a few other things after school and jump to, I'm working with Jamie Oliver, as you do. And I'm opening it, and you know, we open this set of we open a chain of social enterprise restaurants called 15. We opened one in London, one in Amsterdam, one in Melbourne, and one in Cornwall. And it was my responsibility to look after the environment that the young people were developed in. And I remember around about the time that Nelson Mandela was freed that I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be, you know, I wasn't going to get locked up for a long period of time. I mean, you know, he was my hero. He really was my hero, you know. And I remember messing around with this concept called Mandelaesque, you know, to be like. And you know, I didn't know what that. You know, it was just something in my head, you know. And then here I am working at Jamie Oliver, and we have this incredible environment which is full of professionals. Full of a lot of professionals with exacting standards, and we have chefs and managers and publicists and whatever. And then we take these young people who are full of hope but have very poor academic backgrounds and sort of histories with the criminal justice system. And when they were less than perfect, the organizational tendency tended towards, you know, ungrateful or undeserving, and it was my role to ensure that whatever was happening with these young people, we had to make sure that we were open-minded and we continued to understand and ask questions why. And it was this kind of forming of this whole idea of this Mandelaesque thing, you know. Prior to that, it was just me walking around being, you know, magnanimous all the time and pissing people off, you know. But here in this formal social enterprise environment, it was beginning to sort of like take shape. I first came to Cape Town in 2004, 4, and I was living in this amazing place called Raterplatz Estate. It's a gorgeous mountain estate. And the advice, and they're so wealthy there that they're able to kind of attempt to minimize all risk in their life. And so the advice I was given was don't drive down the R300. And you don't look in the eyes at people at traffic lights. And you certainly never go into townships. And so suitably feared up, I went around doing the kind of world-class lifestyle thing that the city has to offer. It was absolutely fantastic. Then jump to 2008, Jamie decides that he wants to go to America. I'd already got the South Africa bug then and, really wanted to open a 15 South Africa and really thought social enterprise would fly here. So in the end, I decided to jump ship and I came here. And it was interesting. At that time, I opened an office in Heritage Square, as you do, and had a load of entrepreneurs there. And what was nice at that time, those entrepreneurs were able to tell me about their aspirations, their hopes, their dreams. And one of the challenges, and I hadn't realized that being in the center of town is where you had to go to get that. And I thought there's thousands of entrepreneurs, thousands of aspirant young people on the Cape Flats. They can't all come to the township. So that also lodged in my head in terms of we need to do something elsewhere. So eventually I spent some time in the township, Langa in particular. It was a really wonderful place. And what I liked about Langa, the kids play in the street, neighbors talk over the fences still, they're having a bit of a natter. It's a far cry from what I was led to believe, what I was told to believe. And I kept thinking, how was I so wrong and so many other people so wrong about this wonderful place? And so I have these entrepreneurs, they're in my office. And we then set about putting together a plan called Harlem Avenue. And this was based around a conversation with Sabu, this entrepreneur that I met. His mother had a restaurant. And the restaurant, she was told me that the woman who has the restaurant next door to her, she's not keen on her opening a restaurant because she's stealing her business. And I said, well, restaurants work better in clusters. It's always better when there's a few restaurants. And so then she says, well, Chris Harney used to live at the top. We've got 2 bars down, and we've got a number of homestays. This is all in one street. And 3 members of Amanpondo. Ringo lives here. We've got the lab assistant, Hamilton Naki, who was Dr. Christian Barnard's assistant, lives in Harlem. And she went on and on and on and on. And I thought, if we can make a tourist industry off the back of William Shakespeare and Jane Austen, we should be able to do something with this. So I went away. And I put together this plan and spoke to the community, as you do, sort of, it's kind of a bit like this, not quite so many. And we talked about this and we began memorializing the homes of these famous people. We also got some corporates involved, and we painted some houses. And what was interesting about working in Langa, it reminded me of the context that I'd grown up in the UK, at the bottom of a racial social order, and Langa being developed in a similar, within the apartheid context of the Western Cape. And so there was some sort of similarity, and I was sort of thinking about this Mandelaesque thing and how we're going to bring those values into this process that we're working on. So, Langa is named after Chief Langa Libelele, and Langa Libelele means the sun is scorching hot. He was chief of the Thlubi tribe, and in 1873 he was captured because he fell foul of the governor of Natal, KZN, and he was sent to Robben Island. After Robben Island, he was sent under house arrest free to Eitvlucht Farm, which is in Pinelands, which is close to close to Langa, and that's how Langa got his name. Kwa Langa, they used to think of the place of Langa. So took all this information, and then I decided to, we did this little Harlem Avenue project, and then the funding we needed to get was 10 million we could get from the Jobs Fund, and I wasn't going to spend 10 million rand in one street. It's obscene, even if it's street Kloof Neck. I don't care. I'm not spending that much money in one street. So I looked at the piece again, and what Langa, where we're working around Harlem Avenue, is a collection of 8 streets. And I looked at this diagram, and while I was looking at this diagram, the 8 streets, or the street plan, form the number 1. And so that became the Langa Quarter. And the Langa Quarter is a sustainable tourist destination in the center of Langa. Langa sits geographically in the center of the Cape City Metropolitan Municipality, which was created in 2000. So most people keep talking about the city centre, but what we need is aspirational development. The development on the Cape Flat tends towards the essential, remedial, developmental, it's a bit, we're emotional and human and aspirational as individuals, and development or interventions need to take that into account. So the Langa Quarter is as I said, a new sustainable destination on the Cape Flats based around history, heritage, culture, and the idea is that what we want to do is create the Salt River effect, but in Langa. Nobody went to Salt River for a very long time. Now you can't park for four-wheel drives on a Saturday, you know. And so we're trying to do the same thing, creating an area which is aspirational, but not just for the people who live there, but for all of Cape Town, all Cape Townians. We know we'll get international tourists there because they'll go anywhere, and we'll get domestic tourist markets. We'll get the domestic tourists there, but it's to get Cape Townians there. And so we want to be the centre of enterprise development. We want to be the centre of the new geographic centre of the metropolitan city municipality of Cape Town, and we also want to be the centre of social cohesion because we sit between the three communities, racially divided communities of Athlone, Langa and Pinelands. And where we are aiming for is Cape Townians, you guys, after you've had your sundowners at Camps Bay and at the waterfront, you should be able to say, let's go listen to some jazz in Langa. Thank you.